Oh my God. Yes, calm down. Once again, live on tape from a secret location hidden somewhere deep in the bowels of historic downtown St. John's, Newfoundland, comes in the Library of Graphic Literature. With me, your fun-filled host, Wallace. And what are we going to do today? Well, we're going to do a couple of things. First of all, we'll have a look at some couple of new books and all that. Wasn't a huge week. And then I'm going to actually feature a set of Masterworks that are a personal favorite of mine, which you'll see in a second. I won't give it away yet. So, let's get straight to work. Okay, let's see, what do we got first? Oh, okay, first of all, oh, pardon me while I take off these glasses here. Okay, first off, Robin Year 1, the deluxe edition. From the likes of Chuck Dixon, Scott Beatty, and Javier Pulido. Now, let's see if I can get this open without tearing my book apart. I've actually never read this series, but in chatting with my local comic book store owner, Jason Conway, a good buddy of mine, he told me he'd read it at the time, and he really liked it. I hear that crack, the old crack of the spine. And let's just have a quick spin. Oh, okay. Very Tim Sale-like art. Very minimalist stuff, which of course, for those viewers who've been watching a lot of me know I love the simplistic sort of style there too. So here we go. Okay. Just so that you can get a good look at so yeah, really great great style. Very simple. Like I say, I really like simple styles. I mean, on the same on the same subject, I also too like complicated art and all that. It varies. Some days I guess I'm in the mood for simple art. Some days I'm in the mood for your Barry Windsor Smiths. Oh, look at this. Kind of nice, hey, without the dust jacket on it. So that's kind of a nice one. Let's see, we'll give that 2 kisses out of 10 just on first impression, and well, let's give it 5, say, because it looks pretty good right away. Okay, let's see, next. Oh, here, this was actually a reorder, I do believe, from the Treasury of British Comics. The Ken Reed Years, Volume 1, the first 100 scrunches. And always liked comic strips anyway myself, and this looks like your typical English humor, mayhem. I was always a big fan of the old Viz magazine. As awful and terrible as it was still kind of funny in a gross kind of way, but I kind of like sort of wacky, really out of control humor. And this seems to have it. They say here that people like Alan Moore, Kevin O'Neill, John Wagner, Pat Mills, all those people were into this, so, you know, maybe it is that good. So, check it out anyway. And Face Ache. Oh, okay. Now, let's see. Oh, I'm saving one of the better ones to last. This one here, this is a book I picked up, well, picked up the first one years ago, and I read it, and I don't know, it was just something about this book that really caught my attention, and then actually I sort of got out of touch with it for a while. Then I noticed recently that they were come upon the last final installment on it, and it was just like, well, I gotta pick this up. So check it out, Boyden Lepp's Rust. It's really good. I really like this one. He's kind of cool. Rust himself. But I don't know if any of you have read any of this up to this point, but it has some really cool artwork. Now let's give you a close up there. But yeah, it's sort of a neat style. Very different story. But great storytelling. Good story, great storytelling. And the art's kind of cool too. Love that cover too. So, that's a very underrated comic actually. So if you see it out there, see these books, and you're wondering, gee, should I pick it up? Pick it up on account of me. On account of I told you. Anyway, let's see. Ooh, here we go. Okay, now this was the fancy pants thing for this week. This I'd seen, I can't remember where I first seen about this. I think it might have been, I think actually Charlie Hatfield mentioned it on his page. Hey Charlie, really nice guy. And anything I see him recommending or talking about on his Facebook page, I just get automatically, and this was one of them. I almost sliced my thumb open there. Would have been kind of cool, blood going everywhere. No, it wouldn't have been. Anyway, this is basically it's the Comics and Culture Quarterly. It's kind of like a comic magazine about comics. There's some comics in it, some articles, stuff like that. And it's kind of cool because it's there's a Alan Moore interview in here. I just love the concept. It's a magazine, but it's in hardcover. You know, maybe this is the future of magazines out there, where magazines actually get into almost like a journalistic or journal-like presentation. But like I say, I've checked this out. Great, cool cover, really cool cover. And we'll just give it a quick flip through here now. So there's some comics, some articles, more comics, cool stuff like that. Like I say, interview with or as they call it, the Lost interview with Alan Moore. More articles, some cool stuff like that. And there was even more comics here towards the end. But yeah, it looks really, really good. I can't wait to sink my teeth into this wee little baby. So yeah, check it out. Full bleed from IDW, the good folks at IDW. They've never steered me wrong. Now, this week, because of the sort of low amount of books in the old book bag that I brought home with me tonight, I decided, well, I'm going to talk a little bit about one of my favorite Marvel Masterworks series. I will, in future episodes, I will ever so often wax eloquent on these, and I decided that for tonight's waxing eloquent, I'll talk about the Captain Marvel ones. Now, this is one of the few Marvel Masterworks that I actually got the marbleized cover for, just because there was something cool about the green at the time. I mean, if you look behind me, I don't know if you can see behind me, for the most part, I tend to get the old-fashioned, well, not the old-fashioned, this is the older, the more sort of plain silver type of cover. I always liked these Masterworks, the silver ones, because of the size of the comic book cover itself. And I know there's something about the Marvel thing after a while. I mean, when they first came out, I can remember buying a few of these when they first came out, and they were pretty cool and all that. But they went and they switched from this to the what they call the Comic Craft covers, which were sort of a really fancy type of cover, and then they switched to this plain old version here, which they've kept ever since. And this, to me, I like it. It's simple and elegant. But I kept this one anyway. It was just because Captain Marvel has actually one of those wee special little places in my heart. Because when I was growing up, I was more or less more of a DC fan. Adventure Comics, Superman, Plastic Man, Green Lantern, The Atom, which I can remember reading when I was like 3 or 4 years old. I grew up during the 60s, during the Silver Age, and I can remember seeing Marvel Comics on the stand and all that, and I can remember reading them, but I think they were just a bit too advanced for me because I was more of a kid. Like, I thought that the Thing was just too weird looking and all that, and I thought Spidey's costume looked weird and just strange. Didn't look like a superhero costume to me at all. So, but I was a kid, and obviously with not a lot of artistic sense. That came later. But out of all I can remember reading some Daredevil comics and all that when I was younger. But of all the Marvel comics, the only one that I actually bought as a kid and followed for some strange reason, which is lost to the mists of time, I fell in love with Captain Marvel, or as I call him, Captain Mar-VELL. Captain Marvel, of course, is the story of Captain Mar-VELL, a Kree warrior. Here, let's get in a close look here now. I even had this comic too. I bought this comic when I was in the 70s. I had every single one of them, as a matter of fact. But there was something about him. I kind of liked the uniform. I liked the fact that some of the that they were all kind of dressed similarly, you know, with Jan Rog and Una, and everyone sort of had a similar sort of outfit. And there was just something about it. Now, of course, as I got older, I realized and became a fan of Gene Colan. I went back and picked up these issues, and I was just like, oh my God, I'd forgotten this was Gene Colan. This one I had too, actually. This was pretty cool. And I don't know how many times I read and reread this as a kid growing up, and as an adult. Then came along Captain Marvel #1. Woo! Look at that guy there. Look. He is the coolest. And like I say, there was just something about Captain Marvel that I kind of liked. I fell for the whole mythos of the Kree Empire and them fighting against the Skrulls, which was kind of cool, and Super Skrull. But like I say, great, amazing Gene Colan art, which sort of continues on for a while. Eventually, and this, I can always remember this guy. Actually, I can remember reading a book about comics and all that when I was a kid, and this page here was used as an example. Great example of visual flow, which it is, of course. Then we had Don Heck, you know, who's still serviceable artist, and I kept reading it, even though it wasn't the same. I still liked it. Like I say, I don't know what it was about his costume I thought was cool, but I thought it was cool. I loved it. It just seemed so snaz-tactic. How's that? Snaz-tactic. Great stories, but and like I say, Don Heck, serviceable enough art. I know some people out there really don't like, are big fans of Don Heck, but hey, I liked it. Then along came Gil Kane, and because the Captain Marvel sort of foundered a bit. It wasn't one of the more popular Marvel titles, and you know, and over the years it was kind of in and out. It would be cancelled and come back or whatever like that, and now at this point it was Frank Springer and Gary Friedrich were writing it, and you know, it was still okay, but you know, I think it was starting to wane on people. Look, they even brought in a few superheroes, I guess, to try to you know, increase his popularity, maybe, or who knows. And then they gave him more powers at one point. This was way before his cosmic awareness and stuff like that, but he was called before some sort of life force or whatever, and they sort of empowered him a bit more and that sort of thing. So he was, I think it was teleportation, I do believe, was his thing. And, oh, there you go. Huh. Kind of like that there. This is the Tom Sutton one. Tom Sutton, actually, too. I always liked Tom Sutton. Another one of the underrated giants of the 60s and 70s. So here he is now, teleporting around, checking things out, making sure everything is cool. Anyway, then we come along to the classic Captain Marvel number 16. Captain Marvel number 16 is where we see the last of the white and the blue costume, and Captain Marvel takes on their familiar blue, yellow, and red costume with the nega bands there that a lot of people who grew up in the 70s more recognize this more as Captain Marvel. And you know, I liked, and it's funny because it took me years to actually get this particular issue. The issue that I had, and that, oh, this was great, and then it gets thrown into the negative zone. And then it languishes a while, and then comes Captain Marvel number 17. And this, when I was growing up, was one of my all-time favorite comics. I'm a huge Gil Kane fan, and this one was just something, once again, it just captured, there was something about Captain Marvel, it just captured my imagination, and this version of Captain Marvel was no different. I mean, look at that opening page. I mean, you don't get splash pages like that anymore, come on. And look at this. Gil Kane has some of the best visual flow of any artist that I know. This, of course, features where he first meets up with Rick Jones, and he puts on another set of nega bands and strikes it, and thus he becomes part and parcel of Captain Marvel. So he ends up floating in the nega zone, and then next thing, Jan Rog appears on the scene, shooting at him and stuff like that, and blah 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 blah. Anyway, it goes on. Then there was the next issue, another great issue by Gil Kane, and Kane did a few issues. There's another one. There's just something about his art. I just can't get enough Gil Kane. This one's the Rat Pack. Another great Gil Kane comic. And then this is the Hulk one, and this one I can remember from being in it was one of the Giant Size or whatever. It was an early reprint, and it reprinted these two stories in it, and that's where I had first seen this particular story, not in the actual comic, but in a reprint. And there we go, more great Gil Kane. Kane did a pretty cool Hulk too, and then this ends off with a actually back to Gene Colan story from Not Brand Eck. And it's funny because years later, when the Not Brand Eck Marvel Masterworks came out, I picked that up. Oh, let's see now, what else? Oh, here we go. So we've gone through the first volume, which caught my attention, the second volume, which made me fall in love even more with Captain Marvel. And this is what sealed the deal, was the Jim Starlin Captain Marvel. Still to this day, the premier Captain Marvel artist. He took it from just being, he took him from being a Kree warrior, you know, who could teleport himself, to this cosmic savior of sorts with something he called cosmic awareness, which was like, he was basically one with the universe and all that. It was no use fighting him because he knew where you were going to punch him. He knew everything. Now, of course, this started out first with, there was a couple of Wayne Boring issues. Wayne Boring was better known for his work on Superman for many decades. And he was good, but he just not the best in my mind on that. And so that sort of languished there for a while until until along came, well, let's see, well, along came Jim Starlin. This is from Iron Man, actually. And, oh, and then here we go. Mike Frederick did the story here, but Starlin quickly took over the writing tasks too. And there we go. And yeah, as a matter of fact, here, plot and art. So he was already taking control of it. And you know, went along. These are, like I say, I had all these comics when I was a kid. Oh, there's Thanos, one of his most incredible creations. And there we go. Oh, and here's the Super Scroll, back for more. I love this stuff. Every page of this has some memory attached to it or another. This one, I always love this one. This one is an amazing issue. I like the recap in this where they talk about, I think it was in this one, or maybe that was in another one. Oh, here we go. And this, of course, this was one of the most influential stories on me in terms of a Marvel story. Was this one, Captain Marvel number 29. This was when he gained his cosmic awareness. One of those great interchange type of stories. A lot of origin type of stuff they talk about, Titan and arrows, and I absolutely love it. I can remember as a kid having this, but I'd gotten it from a friend, so there was like writing on it, which kind of sort of ruined it for me. This was another one of my favorites, though. This, just the memories of having this as a kid and reading it. And good old Captain Marvel, just wreaking havoc, taking names, amazing art, top-notch layouts. Here we go. And basically he takes on Thanos, who's got hold of the cosmic cube and has become godlike himself. And of course, possibly the greatest issue of the entire run here, number 33, where he takes on Thanos. And this is inked by Klaus Janson, and it's just, it's some of the best. Janson was one of the best, was a great person for inking Starlin, I think. And this, I always love this sequence where basically Mar-VELL is aging as he hits and destroys the cosmic cube. And I love this sequence here. The scream and then Death turning around and laughing, and that's the end of Thanos, at least back then, or at least that's what we thought. And then there's some other sort of stuff in the back. So it's hard to say which, like I say, I love so much of the Captain Marvels. It's hard to say which one is my favorite. Now in this issue here, it's the last of the Jim Starlin stories, with the introduction of Nitro, and it's really in that issue that seals the fate of Captain Marvel, as we later learn. It's his battle with Nitro right there, which leaves him tainted with the start of the cancer that later kills him. Inked by Jack Abel, who, you know, I'd prefer other ones, but hey, what are you going to do? And this one was a cool fill-in one. This one was with Alfredo Akela, who, one of my other all-time favorite artists. And then it gets into the Al Milgrom years of Captain Marvel, and he, after Starlin, I thought that Milgrom and Englehart's run was the next best thing. This has to do with the Watcher and the trial of the Watcher. It's an absolutely amazing sequence. This is one of my all-time favorite stories of centered on the latter part of Captain Marvel's run. Here he tries to go after Human again, and this is now one of my. This is another amazing issue. This issue is amazing because not only is it Al Milgrom, but there's Bernie Wrightson, P. Craig Russell McLeod, and Austin inking on this, and you'd think with so many inkers that it'd sort of fall apart, but for some reason I always loved that issue. And then he goes off, Milgrom takes him off on his own exploration here. Oh, there, this was another one of my favorites, with a Milgrom and Wrightson cover. This is also one of my favorite Al Milgrom stories. So Al, thanks a lot. And this ends up where they end up being split off from each other. And they're the giant size. Remember, that's the Hulk one I was talking about and all that. And that was, to me, this was sort of the last of the great Marvel stories. The latter ones that came after the other Captain Marvel stories about I mean, I like the Milgrom stories. The Milgrom stories were my best, but once he left it, I kind of lost interest in it. But now the one thing that these books do have, of course, is the classic Avengers Annual number 7, which basically is where it's the start of the end of Adam Warlock at that time anyway. It was back before people were dying and coming back to life. It's an amazing, amazing issue. And then this also has the 2-in-1 King Size Annual number 2, and that of course is another Starling story. And this finishes off the whole thing, including a scene that's borrowed from the Warlock comic earlier, and or no, that was in the previous one where he's dying and his past self comes and meets him. But a great, great comic. This is another one of my all-time favorites from my youth. I always liked this Adam Warlock and Thanos crying there in the end. So basically, that was more or less about it. The one last sort of big hurrah, I think, for Captain Marvel back then was, of course, the death of Captain Marvel, the famous graphic novel. And oh, here we go. This, of course, is another classic. What I find interesting is the fact that he's one of the few heroes that Marvel has allowed to remain dead. And it's an amazing story. It gets me right here, and even more so now these days when I read it, because I myself, I lost my wife to breast cancer about 12 years ago, and it's something that's always stuck with me, and when I read that now, it sort of gets me right there. Oh, whew. So anyway, that's it really for the Captain Marvel Masterworks. Like I say, this is one of my favorite sets of Marvel Masterworks, and I highly, highly, highly recommend them, especially Volume 3. You gotta have Volume 3. It's a must-have of any collectors, because it's chock-a-block with so many first appearances, so much that's so important. You must have it. Anyway, I've been yammering on and on and on here, so I'll give you time now just to run out and pick up